GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs, where we are plugging through in the bear market, and we're going to talk all about what the latest is when it comes to the market, what's going on, how we should be playing it. We're talking about Instagram adding NFTs to their platform. What does it mean? I think this is a big deal. We're going to talk about why. Doodles, big news out of Doodles, some news out of Deadheads. And then I want to talk about what's going on with OK Bears. If you've been following the market, OK Bears had just a parabolic rise this past week, and we'll break down why and if you should be buying it. But before we get into all of that, it is time to hear a word from our wonderful, wonderful sponsors.
It's increasingly obvious that everything will become tokenized, and NFT marketplaces needs robust financial reporting, performance analysis, and the peace of mind that they are compliance ready. GILDED's NFT Ops is a one-stop financial reporting solution for growing NFT platforms. GILDED has developed marketplace-specific modules to track the financial performance of NFT creators, including revenue tracking, collection metrics, royalty payments, and revenue share. Customers of NFT Ops gain full access to accounting tools and powerful APIs for custom integrations that simplify operations, streamline reporting, and produce tax-ready data. So no wonder why so many top brands like CoinMarketCap, Gitcoin, Nifty's, and POAP trust GILDED to automate complex reporting workflows. Visit gilded.finance/bankless to learn more. Living a bankless life requires taking control over your own private keys. And that's why so many in the Bankless Nation already have their Ledger hardware wallet. And brand new to the Ledger lineup of hardware wallets is the Ledger Nano S Plus, a huge upgrade to the world's most popular hardware wallet. With more memory and a larger screen, the Nano S Plus makes it easy to navigate and verify your transactions. And the paired Ledger Live desktop app gives you increased transparency as to what is about to happen with your NFT. What you see is what you sign. The Nano S Plus gives you the smoothest possible user experience while you're doing all of your crypto things. So go to the Ledger website to check out the features of the new Ledger Nano S Plus and join the waitlist to get yours. And don't forget about the Crypto Life card, also powered by Ledger. The CL card is a crypto debit card that hooks right into the Ledger Live app, right next to all the DeFi apps and services that you're already used to doing, like swapping tokens and staking. So if you don't have a Ledger hardware wallet, go to ledger.com, grab a Ledger, and take control over your crypto.
All right, folks, I am coming at you from the Permissionless conference in Palm Beach in Florida. Shout out to the Bankless fam and to Blockworks. They have put on an amazing conference here. So I have a lot of confidence. This conference will go on again next year. I highly recommend you come, check it out. Palm Beach is beautiful, albeit highly overpriced, but it's okay. I'm over it. I'm having a good time. And it's just wonderful to see people in person. If you've never done the conference thing in the ETH NFT world, I really recommend it. It's beautiful vibes here. But let's get right into what's going on in the market this week. All right, the bear market, it persists, but it seems to be stabilizing. I don't know. It seems like there's less blood in the streets this week than there was previously. Things have stayed fairly steady. I've been, I will say, honestly impressed with the NFT market. I thought there was maybe more of a downturn to come, but I think prices have held fairly steady, especially if you're in blue chips. I mean, you have things like Bored Apes. I think the ape ecosystem dropped to new lows. They dropped below 100 ETH for the first time in a long time. Not new lows. I mean, certainly it's been lower than that. But, things are wobbly and, from all-time highs, things are down. But the market hasn't entirely collapsed, which I think is bullish, some bullishness in this bear market. But I think there's a question of, is this a temporary respite? Are we gonna face more hardship ahead, or are we bouncing along the bottom here? And really, this is where things are gonna bottom out. And at some point, again, we'll see the rise. I think there's two schools of thought here that I'm really following around where we are. I think one school of thought that's maybe more optimistic comes from Raoul Pal. Yeah, he's a macro investor. I've mentioned him before on this podcast. He goes on Bankless quite a bit. Super sharp guy. If you haven't listened to him on any of the Bankless episodes, I recommend it. I think he's a great storyteller. So he makes macro trends feel like you're hearing a story about what's going on in the world. And Raoul's fundamental argument is that CPI, which is the consumer price index, basically tracks the cost of consumer goods, is a lagging indicator. So while it still appears like we have really bad inflation, that's probably not the case, and that prices are actually on their way down, and that it just hasn't really been reflected in the CPI and in some of these other indicators fully. Okay, maybe. And the argument there for Raul and the reason he would be bullish is that means that the Federal Reserve's job is done. They don't have to hike interest rates anymore. The inflation is on its way down. And if anything, he thinks that we're in a recession. Well, that'll be formalized at the end of this quarter, and that the Fed, we may actually have more stimulus coming in the future along with no interest rate hikes. And then that'll be how we'll pull ourselves out of this recession. Kind of a wild bet to me that we're just going to start printing money again and sort of this is a cycle that will never end, seems to be his prognosis. But an interesting idea. Basically, consumers are already starting to feel it. You do see this in China. Retail sales are down big time in China. So again, this fundamental argument that consumers are spending less. It hasn't showed up in some of the indicators yet, but it will. And so actually inflation is on its way down already. Okay, that's one school of thought. The other school of thought, not necessarily diametrically opposed to this, but coming from Jason Friedman, he's on the All In podcast for folks who love All In. Smart VC guy, big in the science and technology, biotech worlds. His argument is that actually consumers right now are keeping afloat on credit. You had this dynamic where we printed a ton of money during the pandemic. We gave out a ton of stimulus checks. People got used to an inflated lifestyle. They got a bunch of money that wasn't really theirs. You could argue whatever. They then lost a bunch of money in the market crash and the crypto crash, but they got used to a certain lifestyle. And to keep those lifestyles afloat, people are now spending on credit. And as a result of that, there's a credit bubble that is forming and there's a credit bubble that will burst. If that happens, I think, there's a lot more pain to come. A credit bubble bursting, if folks really are right now propping themselves up on credit, we could be seeing that in the crypto market. You could have people buying on credit in the crypto markets and in the NFT space, I think in particular, even probably more likely that you have people keeping themselves afloat on credit who are into NFTs than even into just crypto writ large or into DeFi. And I think that could spell more trouble ahead. I have to say, I'm a bit of a cynic. I tend to be a little bit with Jason Friedman on this. It feels to me like there's probably more pain to come in terms of we haven't actually seen the full hit to consumers yet in this recession. The interest rate hikes recently went into effect. I don't think the money has fully bled out of the system yet. So there's still some cash around. I think there might be more pain to come, more pain to hit the NFT market. Make of that what you will. I'm continuing my strategy of just holding on for dear life. I'm not selling. I'm not particularly buying anything other than Ethereum right now, though I'm sure there's bargain deals to be gotten. There's some good NFTs to be buying. I don't happen to be buying them right now. I'm still sort of white knuckling it through because I think there could be more pain to come. But really, who the heck knows? None of us know. Macro is impossible to predict. But those are some thinking that I've been tracking, and make of it what you will. I also will say this. I think there's a debate right now around what's causing inflation. And there's this simple narrative that's what are you talking about? We printed all of this money throughout the pandemic. Obviously, that's causing inflation. If you print a bunch of money, that causes inflation. I find that argument a little weird because we've printed lots of money in the past. Quantitative easing was something we started after 2008, and we didn't see crazy inflation in consumer goods after quantitative easing the first time around. So printing a bunch of money. Now, the difference here is they'd say, okay, but quantitative easing, we didn't give it directly to people. We didn't have the same stimulus check effect. To me, the inflation thing, it makes more sense to me that it's actually about supply chain issues and that the supply chain has taken a hit and that's actually the bigger cause of inflation than these stimulus checks. I think the stimulus checks, a lot of that went into the market and was propping up these growthy tech stocks, your meme stocks, propping up crypto to an extent, propping up NFTs to an extent. But the inflation we're seeing in consumer goods feels like it's more of a supply chain problem. And so the CPI, so I'm skeptical that it can be solved simply through these interest rate hikes. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Raul Paul actually made that point. I thought it was an interesting one. He said we conflate inflation and debasement of currency a lot, and that when the Fed prints a lot of money, it's debasement of currency, and that's not exactly the same as inflation and prices going up. So again, highly recommend you check out Raul Paul and his interview on Bankless. He's great. I learn a lot from him. Take him with a grain of salt. Nobody can know exactly what's going on, but I think he's an interesting thought leader in this space. Okay, that's macro. I want to talk about Instagram NFTs. So we've been teased this for a while. Zuckerberg talked about how Instagram was going to be adding NFTs. I believe it's South by Southwest earlier this year. And we knew it was coming. And now it's here. It's still in somewhat of a beta rollout. It's not available everywhere, but you have select creators where they have this NFT tab on their profile and they can show off their NFTs directly in the app. I think in the immediate term, this isn't a big deal. In the immediate term, especially we're in a bear market, but even if we weren't, I don't think this is suddenly the move that makes the crypto market or the NFT market take off and suddenly we've onboarded a trillion new people to NFTs. But what I think this is incredibly meaningful in the long term. And Adam Mosseri, who is the head of Instagram, seems to get it. I will turn you to, he did a TED Talk very recently, we'll link to it, where he says, hey, look, we are going through this essentially paradigm shift where we are moving from power lying with platforms like Instagram to the power lying with creators. And his posture seems to be like, great. As somebody who runs Instagram, that actually doesn't bother me. That doesn't scare me. I think it's a great thing. We as Instagram just need to learn how to adapt and play in this new ecosystem. And he paints a picture of essentially creators getting to own their audiences. It's a picture you'd hear painted by any sort of Web3 maxi, which is very cool to hear coming from the head of Instagram, where he's like, creators should own their audiences essentially through NFTs. If I like a creator, I can buy, or maybe I get gifted, whatever the case may be, a creator's NFT. And now that makes my audience portable across different social platforms, where if you own a Carly NFT and you're on Instagram, I can maybe be giving private content, special Instagram content to my NFT holders, because Instagram will allow you to plug this NFT into their ecosystem. They'll validate that this NFT is legitimate and authentic. And then you can take that same NFT, log into Twitter. Twitter will verify you've got an authentic NFT. And I can also give you special content as Carly the creator to you, my fan, on Twitter, the platform. And that suddenly you have a certain amount of portability from one social platform to another that we've never had before. I think this is fascinating. And, you know, I do a decent amount of thinking about, will Web3 ultimately spell the demise for these centralized social platforms? And I don't think we have enough information to know the answer yet. These social media platforms have a ton of advantages. They have a ton of money. They have all of the network effects, and it's going to be hard for Web3 platforms to come in and take them down. On the Web3 side, the advantages in theory that we have, if you're trying to make a decentralized social network, for example, is potentially a much better monetization proposition, both for creators and then for the audiences themselves, and audiences getting to monetize their fandom, their engagement in ways they can't on Web 2 platforms. And if we can get that model right and we can actually bring that to life, then yeah, I think there's a very compelling pitch for Web 3 platforms to ultimately dethrone these Web 2 platforms. But when you have Web 2 platforms, you've got Adam Mosseri at Instagram, who seems to understand the shift that's going on in the world. They're going to fight like hell to keep their audiences, and seemingly by doing the right things, which is by giving creators more interoperability in terms of being able to bring their audiences from one platform to another. So very interesting things. Again, in the short term, I think it's not going to suddenly be the catch-all solution for getting the mainstream into NFTs, but in the long term, I think it's a big deal. And of course, you play this out and you can envision a world where people are buying NFTs directly through Instagram. They're going to an artist's Instagram profile, liking a piece of artwork, liking an NFT. You know, the artist has already minted it. Now you just go in, you can buy it. Now it's on your Instagram to show off. I also think something I think quite a bit about is owning moments in movies, owning moments of books. There are so many pieces of media that have been influential in my life, whether that's movies or books or TV shows. And even within those movies, books, or TV shows, moments within those movies, books, or TV shows that are like speak to you. And it's never occurred to me before to post a clip from Legally Blonde, for example, for which there are some seminal moments that I think have impacted my life. It never occurred to me to post those clips on my Instagram, for example, because that's just not really how I've used Instagram, how my peers have used Instagram. But there's a psychological shift that I think potentially happens with NFTs, where suddenly it feels natural to share those things, to buy an NFT of a movie moment and to share it as part of your brand, as part of your persona. And it's not that that's not something you could do today. I could clip a moment from Legally Blonde and post it, but I don't. And I think NFTs might be the catalyst for a psychological shift where I do, because now, hey, maybe I spent $50 on my favorite Legally Blonde moment, and it makes more sense now to make that a part of my brand. So seeing more of that come into play on Instagram, where it's not just about artists and creators, it's also about new ways we're sharing things about ourselves, and we're signaling to the world who we are by sharing book moments, movie moments that are really coming in the form of NFTs. So very excited to see where the Instagram NFT thing plays out. Impressed, frankly, by the extent to which Adam Mosseri seems to get what's going on. Check out his TED Talk. But at the end of the day, I'm always going to be rooting for our decentralized platforms, and I think that's where we want the world to move, of course. Okay. Next thing I want to talk about is Doodles. Doodles, the project that seems to be impervious to the bull market or to the bear market. They have fallen a bit, but that seemed more a result of their duplicator claim has already gone live. So I think people claimed their duplicators and then listed their Doodle. Okay, so if you have not been tracking, Doodles announced that all Doodle holders would be able to claim something called a duplicator on the Doodles website. They have not said much about what the duplicator is, but I have some theories. I have no idea if my theories are like hot takes or if everybody's already talking about this, to be honest. I was trying to find some news articles to see if they were hypothesizing what the duplicator were and duplicators are or what they do, and nobody has as of yet. I'm sure the community has picked up on this, but I'll tell you what I think the duplicator is. But first, so we'll just run through this. What the team has said publicly is that the duplicators are devices that will be usable in their next product release. Haven't said what that product release will be, of course, and that more information will be revealed, and it's seemingly their new product will be unveiled at NFT NYC. So about a month from now, in late June, we'll know more. With that said, the team has been leaving us pretty obvious breadcrumbs about where they're going for a while now. I had Jordan Castro, also known as Poopy, on the podcast probably a couple months ago at this point, and I think he started to tease what this ultimately would be. And so I'll talk about what he said on the pod. He clearly indicated they were playing around with an idea where, for example, you could lease your Doodle back to the Doodle team. The Doodle team could then create multiple different versions, offshoots of your original Doodle to sell to other people with the goal of getting more people into the Doodles ecosystem. But because they're leasing or licensing the Doodle from you, they can then pay royalties, pay a percentage to the original holder, so that the original holder of the Doodle is rewarded while they're simultaneously bringing more people into the ecosystem. I will say, I think this is where Doodles is so a step ahead of so many NFT projects in terms of the way they've thought about how to grow the Doodles brand without diluting existing Doodle holders. I think the classic way we've seen this done in the NFT space is, of course, with airdrops. And you're a Bored Ape holder, you get a dog dropped to you, you get your mutant serum. And I think this Doodles model, again, I'm hypothesizing as to what they're going to do based on things that Jordan has said, is just different. And what I so appreciate is they move the space forward with everything they do. And I know that's a really clear goal of theirs, and everything they do feels like it has intention. I want to say something on airdrops in just a minute here. I'm going to pause, we'll get there. But so I don't know that the duplicator will be exactly that model. I don't know that you're exactly leasing it back to the Doodle team and then they're, creating multiple copies, but clearly, and this is again probably not that hot of a take given the name is duplicator, I think clearly the goal here is to expand the ecosystem of holders so that more people can buy into the project while making sure that the value is accruing back to their original holders. Jordan and Evan, two of the founders of the project, also recently went on, I think it was NFT Now. It was an NFT Now podcast. And Jordan said something about wanting to create like an infinite supply for the base Doodles, but scarcity comes from traits. And I think this is also something that Doodles is really at the forefront of, which is understanding that these NFTs are fundamentally about identity, and it's about digital identity. So we saw this with wrapped doodles. When they did the space doodles, which was a wrapped doodle, what they were essentially allowing is for you to take your initial avatar, your initial NFT, your PFP, your initial doodle, and turn it into an astronaut effectively, right? Turn it into a space doodle, turn it into something else. And when Jordan and I talked on the podcast, he mentioned like, you want to be able to do this in a lot of different ways. Hey, do you want to represent yourself as a chef in the metaverse? Great, you can now wrap your doodle and put on a chef's hat. Or you want to put on a different t-shirt because you want to put on the t-shirt of your favorite band and you want your doodle to wear your favorite band's t-shirt. Great, you can wrap your doodle and now they wear that band t-shirt. And so pushing on this idea of allowing for a lot of different traits to represent identity is something that they have been thinking about and playing with a lot. I really think this team stands apart in terms of how thoughtful they are in the space. And I want to say, I don't know that that necessarily means it will always correlate to floor price. Like, we have not yet as a space figured out how to value NFT projects because it's so new. We don't know yet. So there's a world in which, I don't know, the Doodles floor price collapses for any number of reasons, but that doesn't in any way detract to me from the fundamental thoughtfulness of this team and the way that they push things forward. Okay. I want to say something else, and I want to say it about airdrops. So in the interview with the NFT Now team, Jordan said he gets asked a lot. Poopy said that he gets asked a lot, why hasn't Doodles done an airdrop? And on the surface, this is a really natural question, understandable that they're getting asked that because most of the major projects have done airdrops. And again, I love that Doodles has not done an airdrop. So here's a note on airdrops. A team should only do an airdrop if they're very clear as to why they're doing an airdrop, and only if they think it is value accretive to their initial set of holders. I want to make a comparison here to stock buybacks in the traditional Web 2 world. I've mentioned Warren Buffett several times on this podcast. I've been talking about him more recently. My first job out of college was at a hedge fund that was a value investing fund that wanted to follow Warren Buffett to the grave, like loved Warren Buffett. So I got a lot of my early financial learnings from Warren, which is funny that I'm now in the NFT space because Warren would not touch this space with a 10-foot freaking pole. But I remember him talking about stock buybacks, and he was like, companies should only engage in stock buybacks if they believe that their stock is fundamentally super undervalued. And unfortunately, that's not the only time you see companies do stock buybacks. Companies will do stock buybacks because they want to boost the share price of their stock. In the most cynical examples, I think you have executives at times whose compensation is tied to share price, and they want the share price to get a boost for the sake of their own compensation. So they go in and buy up shares, even though the stock itself is not undervalued and it's not necessarily, the price is not necessarily overly attractive. Now, on the surface, this feels like it benefits shareholders in the short term. Or in fact, it does benefit shareholders in the short term, right? Because if they buy back a bunch of shares, it boosts the share price. If you're a shareholder, great, you just watch the share price get boosted, and isn't that lovely? But in the long term, it actually hurts shareholders. And in the long term, it hurts the company because it wasn't a good use of capital. Buying properly valued or call it overly valued stock is not a good long-term strategy for the company. And I feel that way about airdrops, right? If you're doing an airdrop because you don't know what else to do as a project and you think it'll give you a short-term boost and your community will be excited in the short term, you're probably right. It will give you a short-term boost. But in the long term, you've actually just created more holders, you created more expectation, you've got more people you're beholden to, and you haven't actually served a higher strategy. So I think airdrops, they're used to just prolong a Ponzi scheme. I mean, that's the truth, right? If something has value and you're just doing an airdrop so you can have more things that have value to prop up the price of the original thing, like, that's an unsustainable system and dynamic. So I think projects need to be really, really thoughtful before they do an airdrop. And there are obviously projects that have done it well. Everyone knows I'm a fan of DeadFellaz. A lot of these blue chip projects that have done airdrops, I get it. Again, you want to be able to expand the amount of holders, expand the reach of your collection, fine. But I am very wary of airdrops that feel like they're for an airdrop's sake. So again, just commend Jordan, commend the Doodles team for not bowing to pressure and thinking from a first principles perspective of like, okay, what is the point of the airdrop? In theory, it's to get more holders into your community. Are there more interesting ways to achieve that same end? And we'll see what comes with the duplicator, what comes moving forward. But I love it. I love that they are doing things the way they're doing them.
If you're starting on your NFT journey, you need MetaMask. This is your tool to unlock the world of DeFi and NFTs without giving up custody over your private keys. MetaMask is both a secure in-browser wallet and also a secure bridge for your hardware wallet so that you can connect to any Web3 enabled website. You can now trade tokens with any DEX or aggregator. MetaMask Swap gathers real-time pricing information across the DeFi exchange ecosystem, allowing you to select your best price while getting all of the MetaMask benefits of self-custody, lower gas costs, and increased transaction success rates. MetaMask also has a fantastic mobile wallet, which I use while I'm out and about. And I use it to collect POAPs, NFTs, and use it for all my DeFi things while I'm away from home. If you haven't downloaded MetaMask, you gotta try it out. Download MetaMask for desktop and mobile at metamask.io, or load up your Ledger, Trezor, Keystone, or Lattice hardware wallets so that they too can get into Web3. RARIBLE is the NFT platform that's leading the charge into the multi-chain universe ahead of us. Available on Flow, Tezos, Polygon, and of course Ethereum, RARIBLE is the perfect place for NFT newcomers, profile picture collectors, and experienced NFT traders. RARIBLE has a variety of NFT features that set it apart from other NFT marketplaces. They have a native messaging function allowing you to DM your friends or haggle with sellers. They also have a mobile app on iOS and Android with a built-in NFT portfolio tracker tool so you can easily check the value of your digital art portfolio. RARIBLE is built on the RARIBLE protocol, a multi-purpose, open source, and community-governed NFT protocol that helps build products and services across the NFT ecosystem, including white label marketplaces tailored to specific NFT communities. So go to rarible.com and start discovering and trading NFTs, putting in floor bids to join PFP communities, and DM with some brand new internet friends.
Next up, I want to talk about DeadFellaz. I just mentioned them. Did I call them Deadheads? I may have just called them Deadheads if I mentioned them earlier. If I did, I apologize. I meant DeadFellaz. They did the Dead Friends drop. They've done airdrops. Fan of their project, of course. I've talked about them many times. Interviewed Betty as my first guest. Okay, the news coming out of DeadFellaz. They signed with UTA, which I think we've mentioned before on this podcast, UTA being one of the big three agencies, along with CAA and WME. No real news about what they're planning with UTA, just that they're excited for the partnership. It seems to suggest that there'll be something in terms of entertainment, whether that's movies, TV. But these managers, UTA, these talent agencies deal in everything. So who knows what they have cooking with UTA, but exciting news. And then they announced that they have hired a woman named Steph Chapman to be their director of project management and marketing. Steph has a background from Netflix, so also from the entertainment industry. Again, I think that's striking. And so bullish. DeadFellaz is one of those projects that is in it for the long haul. I bought them shortly before the market really crashed, so I'm down on them a little bit right now, but very happy to be a holder. I think they are just going to continue to build, and the bear market isn't slowing them down at all. So always excited to see what will be coming out of DeadFellaz. Also, Betty, I don't know if she's doxing herself for the first time fully, but she's going to be in person at VCon. So I think that we are all going to learn who Betty is, which I'm about to talk a little bit about Anon teams, Anon projects. I've said it's nuanced before because I love Betty and I believe in Betty and I believe in the DeadFellaz team. They are on an Anon team, but I do in general tend to have a strong preference towards doxed teams. So anyways, I'm excited to meet Betty. I'm excited to see her in person. And if you're going to VCon, hit me up. Okay, the last project I want to talk about in this perhaps slightly shorter episode than usual, in part because I'm at the Permissionless conference right now and a little distracted, is OK Bears and not OK Bears. If you've been avoiding looking at the market recently because of everything that's going on, I understand. Here's the TLDR. OK Bears is a Solana-based project that launched a few weeks ago and did very well. In fact, it recently surpassed, it did more volume than any Ethereum-based project, which is the first time that's happened. The first time a Solana-based NFT project has surpassed all Ethereum-based projects in terms of one-day volume. So it did 18 million, I believe, USD in sales recently. So big deal. And I want to talk about OK Bears as a project, but it hit new levels this week because we saw a project called Not OK Bears, which was a direct ripoff of OK Bears. launch and also do a lot. It did like 3,500 ETH volume on OpenSea before OpenSea shut it down. It got DMCA'd, right? It was for being a copycat. And there's some theories as to why it took that long for OpenSea to DMCA them. One cynical conspiracy is that OpenSea, there was so much trading volume happening on the Not Okay Bears page, and Coinbase wanted, or OpenSea wanted their 2.5% royalties on that. So they waited a little while before they shut it down. Who knows? But that has made, I think, the OK Bears project just surface that much more to the fore, because anytime there's these controversies with DMCAs and things, it seems to boost a project's profile. So let's talk about OK Bears first, and I'll say a couple more things about the Not OK Bears project and my thoughts on this. Okay, OK Bears, it started on Magic Eden, which is the Solana native marketplace, but we now know OpenSea is offering Solana projects on OpenSea, so you can also trade OK Bears on OpenSea. It is getting called the next Bored Ape Yacht Club. This to me is a sell sign. I have said it before. I think it is a red freaking flag when people start saying this is the next, Bored Ape Yacht Club, especially very early in a project's founding. It usually means that it's super, super hyped and it's due for a bit of a downturn. That's my personal opinion. We'll see what happens. Right now, last I checked, it was sitting at a little over the equivalent of 5 ETH, a little over $11,000, which is about, I think it was like 230 Sol. Sol price is about $51 right now. So that's where it's sitting. Here's what OK Bears seem to do to distinguish themselves and to get this big pop. My understanding, and I'm not deep into the Solana ecosystem, I have to admit, but is that there hadn't been a really super well branded project to come out on Solana. That a lot of Solana projects were focused on more short-term utility, short-term roadmap plays. I've heard arguments that that's because trading on Solana is cheap, right? That's the whole point. It doesn't have the gas fees of Ethereum. And so there's a lot of quick trading, flipping, and there's a lot of focus on short-term utility, short-term plays in the Solana ecosystem. And so what OK Bears seem to do to distinguish themselves is come out with a real branding play, something on the order of an Azuki in terms of creating a feel and an IP that might have lasting potential. That's what the Bulls would say, at least. And I think if you go to the OK Bears website, you feel some of this. It's a solid website. They have created a feel with them. Their whole premise is it's okay to be okay. We're gonna make it. It's a very positive, beautiful, vibey thing around just being okay. And of course, they have some puns on the fact that they're called OK Bears. So they have the bear market as in a marketplace, but it's the bear market, ha ha ha. And you have to see it to really understand it, right? But you go to the website, you can see that they have a brand and they have a feel and they have a vibe and they've done a good job with it. And that seems to be something distinct from other projects that have come out of Solana. So that seems to be what's fueled their initial success. They also have these emotive, cartoony bears that, again, are getting compared to the emotive cartooniness of Bored Apes, which, okay, how many freaking cartoony animals have we seen? Like, dear God, that should just no longer be noteworthy in my opinion, but all right. Here's my qualm with OK Bears, acknowledging that they have done a decent job branding themselves. It's once again just an opacity around the team and their full backgrounds. Like, God dang it, man. Like, how many times do we have to go through an Azuki scenario to learn that we should expect more transparency from founders? And I get it. It's tough. The Anon thing is tough. I just talked about Deadheads. I'm obviously a fan of Betty. She's been Anon. There's always nuance to things. There are Anon teams that I'm willing to bet on. But I just need to see more than I see from so many of these Anon teams in order to be willing to make the bet. So let's break this down in the context of OK Bears. First of all, they don't have a team link on their website. They have a tab called The Park on their website, which how are you supposed to know what that means? But if you go to The Park, you see, and you scroll down, then you'll find the team. The seemingly leader of the project is a guy named Kais, I believe is how you pronounce it, Kais. He gives a little bit of a background, but again, there's no LinkedIn. There's no way to actually track who this person is IRL. He seems to be fairly anonymous. I listened to a Twitter space or part of a Twitter space with the team. And I wanted to shake the interviewer. It was a Magic Eden, again, the Solana marketplace. It was this Magic Eden team. It was somebody from the Magic Eden team who was interviewing these founders. And his first question was like, hey, people want to know your backgrounds and experiences. Can you talk about that? And Subi, who's the engineer, I suppose, or Kais, anyways, one of the people who was on the call was like, talked about how they met doing Bitbirds, like another NFT project that was open source or whatever, and talked about Bitbirds and the way they kept that art simple and minimalistic and learned from it and whatever, without actually saying anything about his own personal background or experience or, professional experience. Like, I can't do it. I won't do it. Like I interviewed Betty. I felt like I got a really good sense of her. She's anonymous, but I felt like you strike me as an adult who has had a tremendous amount of professional experience, who I trust to build a global brand. I don't know who you are, but that's the vibe I'm getting, and I'm gonna go with that vibe. I just don't get it from these other teams when you're learning about them on a Twitter space and the tech is breaking down and. So, okay, there's my thought on OK Bears. I'm not saying the project won't do well. I have no idea. I'm just saying I'm not investing in it. I'm not doing it. I'm not buying a project where I really can't get a sense of fundamentally who the people behind the project are. And I respect people's right to privacy. I don't believe in doxing people. But personally, I'm going to vote with my money, and I'm not putting my money towards a team that I don't really fully understand. With all that said, Azuki, of course, is sitting at like a 13 ETH floor. It like promptly spun back up from the 70th where it was. But I've said, I think the Azuki team is actually very talented. I've now heard Zagabond on Spaces. I've read Zagaband's writing. Some moral qualms there, but I think an incredibly smart, talented person. It might be a team. I think it's a team that can execute. Okay. Also, I'm like, guys, we're in a bear market. There are lots of good opportunities. Like, we don't need to just throw money at any old project these days, which OK Bears has a decent branding play. I'm not trying to say they're any old project, but like we can up our standards. It's a bear market now. They have to compete for our money. Projects have to compete for our money, not the other way around. Okay, and then not OK Bears. Look, this is crazy. I can't even believe we're still having these kinds of conversations. Not OK Bears, total ripoff project, launched on Ethereum. People made a bunch of money on it. Crazy volume. The wildest thing is so not OK Bears launches on Ethereum, does crazy volume, gets DMCA'd, gets taken off the OpenSea platform. Promptly, a new Not OK Bears Twitter account starts up that rapidly gets more followers than the original Not OK Bears Twitter account. They're now trying to launch a project. I mean, this space is just ridiculous, and how quickly these bullshit projects get spun up. And then, it's just gambling at that point. And I think the people who participate in these ecosystems understand they're just gambling. But again, I'm like, we're in a bear market. There are good deals to be had. Why are you spending your money on these obviously bullshit projects like Not OK Bears? I guess people just like the high. All right, I'll never understand it. It'll never be me. But if you made some money on that, I guess good for you. Here's my big takeaway, though. It is more about the Solana ecosystem broadly. I do think we should all be watching Solana right now and the Solana ecosystem. A lot of alt layer ones took a big hit. Obviously with the Terra ecosystem take a really big hit, but you've had all of these alt L1s fare worse than Ethereum has during this bear market, which is what you would expect because they're newer. And what you see over time is as an ecosystem matures, the lows don't get quite so dramatic, right? You don't drop 90% in a bear market. You maybe drop 70% and then you drop 50% and then, then you're dropping 30%, whatever it is, right? As each successive bear market, the more mature you are as an ecosystem, the less you fall as a percentage of the overall ecosystem. Solana, a lot of these alt L1s, this is their first bear market, really. And so these are going to be the biggest drops. The ones that can survive this bear market will come out stronger and could see really big pops in their ecosystem. ETH, I think, hit like an $80 low during the last bear market, and then of course came back raging and looks like it's going to bottom out here at $1,700. Maybe it drops a little bit lower than that at some point, but I actually doubt it. I think the $1,700 we've seen ETH go to is probably more or less where the bottom ends up being. And maybe it goes back down to 1,700, but it's not going to drop into three figures. So for that reason, I think it's important that we watch these alt L1s, see who's coming out stronger. And if you're in the NFT space, as we are, a chain like Solana that is building itself to be an NFT chain, if it can survive, there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential for NFTs in Solana if the chain survives this bear market and thrives in the aftermath. So I do think tracking what's happening with OK Bears, I do think tracking what's happening with some of their NFT projects is a worthwhile endeavor if you're really into flipping and NFT trading and understanding the ecosystem. I'm going to make it a point to learn a little bit more about it. It's definitely a weak spot in terms of my understanding, and I don't know where it'll land, right? I don't know where this plays out, but it's a new chain, so of course it's taken a big hit during this market time, but that could mean some of the greatest gains could be gotten in the Solana ecosystem when we come out of this bear market eventually. So that's it. That's our show. I'm sure I missed some things this week. I apologize. You can tweet at me. Tell me what I didn't talk about that you want to hear me talk about. Again, it's been a little chaotic here getting to Permissionless. I had a travel nightmare that I won't bore you all with, and then have a number of panels that I've been moderating here at Permissionless, and I fly out to VCon tonight. This is Thursday as I'm recording this. I'll be at VCon starting tomorrow, hosting a number of panels, moderating a bunch of panels at VCon. So if you are there, come say hello. I would love to meet you. Would love to see you. And with that, have a great weekend, folks. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.